Good afternoon, colleagues. A warm welcome from my side to this side event on the role of landlocked countries in the implementation of the BBNJ Agreement during this first session of the BBNJ Preparatory Commission. I hope you all managed to get a sandwich down from the Vienna Cafe, and please also feel free to come a bit closer. It feels like it's a very big room, and could be more intimate if we are closer. My name is Maximilian Gork. I'm the legal advisor in the Permanent Mission of Austria to the United Nations. And before formally starting our event, I would really like to thank our partners in this side event, the Permanent Mission of Nepal to the UN, the High Seas Alliance, and Ocean Care for their support in organizing this. As reflected in our concept note, the intention of this side event is really to show the significance of the BBNJ agreement for all countries, regardless of their geographical location. And that includes, of course, landlocked countries, and how they can engage in and benefit from the BBNJ agreement, as well as more general on their role regarding ocean governance. Before handing the floor to our distinguished panelists, I briefly wanted to share some facts with you on landlocked countries. Currently, there are 44 landlocked countries. Landlocked meaning, as the word suggests, that they have no territorial connection to the ocean. 2 of those states are even doubly landlocked, meaning that they are surrounded only by other landlocked countries. Those are Liechtenstein and Uzbekistan. 32 of those 44 landlocked countries are classified as landlocked developing. And this, I think, already underlines the economic disadvantages that some of these countries are facing. At the same time, international cooperation and agreements such as BBNJ, they may possibly alleviate the situation. In addition to that, landlocked countries also constitute a relevant factor when it comes to the necessary number of 60 ratifications for the entry into force of BBNJ. And that's also why we're having this conversation. After hearing from our distinguished panelists, we will have a brief Q&A session before concluding remarks from the High Seas Alliance. Having said that, I would now hand the floor over to our co-organizer, Nepal, for the opening remarks. Secretary Udaya Raj Sapkota from the Ministry of Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs of Nepal. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to this side event entitled The Role of Landlocked Countries in the Implementation of BBNJ Agreement. We are happy to co-organize this event along with Austria and High Sea Alliance and Ocean Care. I am confident that this event will contribute towards increased awareness and recognition of the role of landlocked countries in the implementation of BBNJ Agreement, including with respect to matters discussed at the ongoing PrepCom. In this context, let me highlight the importance of BBNJ agreement to a landlocked country like Nepal. Nepal, as a landlocked country, has benefited from the provision of the UNCLOS that specifically address and provide for the rights of the landlocked countries. Therefore, Nepal places great importance in strengthening and ensuring that instruments negotiated and agreed on under the aegis of the UNCLOS are effectively implemented. Nepal became a signatory of the BBNJ agreement on 20th September 2023, and currently we are gearing up efforts to complete the domestic procedures for ratifying the BBNJ agreement. It is obvious that the primary segment of any international legislation implementation is its entry into force. Ladies and gentlemen, High Seas, the common heritage of mankind, a principle of international law codified under the UNCLOS that landlocked countries are greatly benefit from. With provisions set forth in the UNCLOS and extended by the BBNJ agreement, landlocked states now have a greater say on how the marine resources to be explored, how the exploitation of the resources is to be limited, and how the dire effects invited by the uncontrolled exploitation of the ocean resources can be mitigated. The four main issues provided by the BBNJ agreement, namely marine genetic resources, including the fair and equitable sharing of benefits, measures such as area-based management tools, including marine protected areas, environmental impact assessment, and the capacity building and the transfer of marine technology are indeed, to a great extent, relatively connected and to some extent directly relevant to the landlocked states. In this vein, allow me to illustrate as to how a landlocked state like Nepal can potentially benefit and to protect it from the provisions of the BBNJ agreement. Accounting for 97% of Earth water, the ocean is critically important for the global hydrological cycle and tightly interlinked with the freshwater, glacier, and river systems, as well as atmosphere water. Nepal being home to the Great Himalayas, the Himalayan barrier effect influences and rainfall pattern throughout Nepal. The monsoon winds picked up from the Bay of Bengal region travel northwest towards Nepal. These winds power down as an effect of the Himalayan barrier effect. The change in sea temperatures and wind pattern over the Indian Ocean influences the rain patterns in Nepal. Let me highlight that human activities that cause the sea temperature to fluctuate, marine pollution, and climate change, along others, result into the many environmental impacts in Nepal, including intense and frequent natural calamities, delays or little or no rain, including unusual rain pattern, and extreme weather events. In this regard, obligation to conduct EIAs as stipulated in BBNJ can be a great value in mitigating these severe consequences and threats. The new avenues opened by the BBNJ agreement, like capacity building and technology transfer, international environment diplomacy, among others, will indeed be beneficial for the LDC and the LLDCs alike. The common heritage of mankind and the resources that are found in the high seas is for the entire humankind and to share and benefit from. There is no distinction and should not be any in terms of a state being a coastal state or a landlocked one with regard to exploration and the utilization of the resources that lie in the seas beyond the national jurisdiction. Landlocked countries should be included in decision-making on marine and environmental issues within international forums. Landlocked countries have the condition and potential to contribute to the issues of environmental and climate change impacts affecting our terrestrial ecosystem and freshwater resources. Together, we can engage more in capacity building initiative aiming for enhancing marine scientific research and monitoring based on a fair and equitable system. Finally, I take this opportunity to reiterate Nepal's commitment to contributing constructively the effective implementation of BBNJ agreement. I look forward to having fruitful discussion in today's event. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sapkota, for already highlighting or touching upon many relevant points on the role of landlocked states and why they are affected and why they should have a say in this as well. I would now like to ask my colleague, Deputy Permanent Representative of Austria to the UN, Stefan Bretterhofer, to give the keynote presentation on the role of landlocked countries in shaping ocean governance. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Max. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you for spending your lunch break with us. I think we can look forward to very interesting discussions today in the afternoon, and I would like to take the floor and share a few thoughts from our perspective. The BBNJ Agreement is a landmark treaty, and it's a landmark for two main reasons. First, it's a historic achievement in efforts both to ensure the health and resilience of ocean ecosystems and also to level the playing field in the capacity to participate in and benefit from activities in areas beyond national jurisdiction. And second, it's a testament to effective multilateralism and the international legal order, which still delivers concrete outputs. And Austria is a staunch supporter of multilateralism and the rule of law, and we would like to seize this opportunity of this first PrepCom session to shed light on the role that landlocked countries can and should play in the implementation of this agreement. We are very thankful to our partners from the Permanent Mission of Nepal, the High Seas Alliance and Ocean Care to make this side event possible. Let me now turn to the Austrian perspective on this topic. Although being landlocked, Austria, like others, has a legitimate interest in the protection and sustainable use of marine biodiversity. We also conduct marine scientific research, including in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Therefore, since the beginning, we have actively participated in the BBNJ negotiation process and played a constructive role in the Intergovernmental Conference. During the first session of this conference, Austria was the presidency of the European Union, and we chaired the EU Council Working Group on the Law of the Sea, and therefore we represented the EU in the negotiations together with the European Commission. And following the adoption of the final text in June 2023, we signed the agreement on 20th of September 2023, and like many others, are currently in the internal process of ratification. And I can share with you that we are aiming at concluding this process by the end of this year. Even if Austria may not be directly affected by some implementation measures, we still want to make our contribution to a swift entry into force of the agreement. And why so? That's because we consider this a crucial development in ocean governance. Our support for the BBNJ agreement is also linked to our long-standing commitment to UNCLOS, as the BBNJ agreement shall be interpreted and applied in the context of and in a manner consistent with UNCLOS. It constitutes indeed a further refinement of ocean governance in this area. Ocean governance matters to the entire international community. Landlocked states also have maritime interests, including to fly a national flag or to conduct maritime scientific research. The geographical location of a state should not be a major impediment to benefiting from maritime uses. This approach was also reflected in UNCLOS. And Austria defended this position already during the negotiations on UNCLOS as the chair of the group of landlocked and geographically disadvantaged states. That's a group comprising in total 55 member states. It was a great success that the right of access by landlocked countries to and from the sea and freedom of transit could be incorporated in Article 125 of UNCLOS. The rights of landlocked states have thus become an integral part of the law of the sea. Furthermore, what does it in fact mean to be landlocked? Article 124 of UNCLOS is quite clear in stipulating that landlocked state means a state which has no sea coast. But landlockedness has different historical reasons and implications for different countries. Modern states depend on international negotiations and the common heritage principle to overcome landlockedness. There are different ways of overcoming landlockedness. Some use commercial vessels under their flags that profit from access rights negotiated in UNCLOS. Others use their economic leverage. My country is in the fortunate position to benefit from the close integration with the EU market, but it's clear that not all landlocked countries find alternative ways, and especially landlocked developing countries suffer a cost of trade and experience less economic growth. And in this context, the BBNJ agreement offers those countries possibilities, such as benefit sharing with regard to marine genetic resources. If you look into the concrete provisions, the common heritage principle and special interests of landlocked states are already reflected in the preamble. The building and development of capacity of landlocked states with regard to marine generic resources is stipulated in Article 9. And these states should also be supported through the transfer of marine technology. They should also be put in a position to prepare, conduct, and evaluate environmental impact assessments. And finally, the special needs of landlocked developing countries are also reflected with regard to eligibility for access to funding from the mechanism, including for capacity building and transfer of marine technology. Beyond that, landlocked states can participate in the implementation of the specific tools established through the BBNJ Agreement to safeguard marine environment and biodiversity, such as area-based management tools, including marine protected areas. Like all other parties to the agreement, they can submit proposals to establish those tools and can take part in the subsequent review and decision-making process. So, having said that, I think we can sum up that the BBNJ agreement really aims at improving the position of landlocked states, and in particular landlocked developing countries, in comparison to the provisions of UNCLOS, especially when it comes to the sharing of benefits of marine genetic resources and their digital sequence information. In this vein, it will be important to ensure that non-monetary benefit sharing, including access to samples and scientific data, will benefit landlocked states and humanity as a whole, while not overburdening scientists with bureaucracy. Careful management and protection of the ocean's global benefits is a key feature of a sustainable future for all states, no matter whether they are coastal or landlocked. So for all those reasons, Austria supports a swift entry into force, as well as a transparent and inclusive implementation of the BBNJ agreement. We'll work closely with other states, as well as partners from the civil society, to achieve this goal together. And I thank you for your attention. Back to you, Max.
Thank you so much, Stefan. We will now turn to our panelists. And unfortunately, the colleagues from Malawi were not able to participate in person in the first session of the BBNJ Preparatory Commission, but we managed to secure a video message from Mr. Joel Little Matonga, Deputy Director and Head of Legal Services and Treaties in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Malawi. The contribution of Malawi is particularly important because they already ratified the BBNJ agreement on 27 February 2025.
My name is Joel Matonga. I am from the Republic of Malawi, and I serve as Head of Legal Services and Treaties in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've had the honor of participating in several parts or sessions of the negotiations leading up to the adoption of the BBNJ agreement, and myself and my colleague who was in New York recently joined us back in headquarters, have had the privilege of championing the case for the BBNJ agreement in Malawi, that has led or culminated into Malawi ratifying the agreement. So it is my honor to say a little something about the role of countries like Malawi in the implementation of the BBNJ agreement. But first, I think some of the pertinent questions that I would ask myself and Malawi is, why is the BBNJ story important for Malawi? And how do we go about the process, or did we go about the process of ratification? And underlying those two questions, I think, is this curiosity. How can a developing, landlocked African state conceptualize joining highly industrialized countries, coastal countries, mostly, in the conservation and sustainable use of a resource that's so far away from its site and reach? Sometimes it makes easier sense for seeds, right? Unlike landlocked developing countries like Malawi, which seem to almost be in opposite camps of priorities when it comes to the realities of the prominence of law of the sea issues in terms of government prioritization. For seeds, the oceans are their lifeline, direct lifeline, and issues surrounding oceans are existential in nature. What about for landlocked developing countries like Malawi? How is that something that they can physically touch or see? How do we conceptualize the oceans? And in particular, this third implementation agreement under the Law of the Sea Convention. I think these realities come to us in different forms. For Malawi, in 2023, in March, we had one of the worst devastating cyclones we have ever seen and experienced, displacing thousands, killing hundreds. We cannot explain a cyclone because we don't have a coast. But it doesn't see any cost. It doesn't see the boundaries. A cyclone will reach us. We have a cost or not. And these are extreme weather events that are caused by climate change, by activities that are being undertaken on the oceans. And yet Malawi had very little to do with it. So it means Malawi has to step up and to be involved in the things it may not have on its backyard, but they affect Malawi in one way or the other. Somehow Malawi believes that the ocean and its resources, an endowment which the world is yet to ascertain its truest enrichment for humankind, plays a critical part in the survival of humankind as a whole. We have believed in the spirit of the negotiations of the BBNJ Agreement and the spirit of the current sessions being held in New York for the preparatory work of the COP, as well for the first meeting of the COP and the entry into force of the agreement, that have aimed at leaving nobody behind. More so for resources of an area that belong to no one and yet belong to everyone. But what has been the ratification process for Malawi? I think Malawi found itself in favor or favored by the fact that we have a rather centralized process of ratifying international agreements or treaties. Malawi is a dualist state in terms of how it deposits or expresses its consent to be bound by a treaty. We do not take treaties to Parliament before we deposit an instrument of ratification, meaning the decisions are done by the executive branch of government. And it was an easier step for us because there were not a lot of stakeholders to consult, because most government ministries, departments, and agencies did not consider the BBNJ agreement something within their purview. So it's something that has been totally within the four corners of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, involving other departments and agencies only to a limited extent, because they did not feel that they needed to be involved in such a big way. And as such, the consultative processes that usually happen for every agreement did not have to be as laborious as they would be for other agreements that have a lot of interested parties and stakeholders. And so for Malawi, the process for the consultations leading up to the ratification of the BBNJ agreement was rather more seamless than it could be in other cases. And so it involved ministerial consultation, the kind of obligations that Malawi would obtain by ratifying the agreement. Also, understanding that this is an agreement that is being made pursuant to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, to which Malawi is already a state party. And so after those consultations, then Malawi engaged their relevant cabinet ministerial portfolios and eventually led to the signing of the instrument of ratification by the head of state and government. And after the ratification process, and once the agreement enters into force, Malawi would then, through the cabinet, inform Parliament of the ratification. And this is the procedure that obtains in Malawi on the ratification process. The foreseen challenges in terms of implementation are that we really do not have law of the sea issues in general as a matter of priority within the government system. And as such, the resources to be able to participate in important meetings that lead up to very important decisions being taken is affected. And a good example is the current PrepCom. We were not able to get the relevant support from within the government structure, and as such, we're not able to participate physically in the meeting, which is an important aspect of preparing for the implementation of the agreement. And the second thing is the mode in which important decisions that would affect the interests of Malawi for joining the agreement, such as, for example, how would decisions on the sharing, access and benefit sharing of marine genetic resources of areas beyond national jurisdiction be taken? And they'll be taken by consensus, and if not, a fallback clause on majority voting. How have consensus-based decision-making mechanisms affected other similar decision-making mechanisms in existing frameworks? And we have seen that these types of decision-making mechanisms are best for countries that are able to participate, and secondly, countries that have human resources that are up to task, that understand the issues, that participate in developing the issues. And if Malawi continues to not have capacity, both in terms of its human resource and in terms of its financial capacity to be able to be present when important decisions are being considered and taken, then this will affect its implementation. This will affect the extent to which Malawi can fully benefit from being a party to the BBNJ agreement. And we believe that these issues can be circumvented. Personally, I believe that Malawi can benefit by increasing its representation in New York by having specialized officials that participate in issues such as the PrepComs. And should we have a seat of the Secretariat in a particular jurisdiction, that Malawi should deliberately appoint diplomats to these jurisdictions, because that is what will help us to maximize our participation as well as maximize the level of impact that the BBNJ agreement will have on Malawi. And one of the important elements I've already alluded to that Malawi is interested in is marine genetic resources. But what about research? We will need more, know-how in terms of how we can take advantage of marine scientific research in these areas beyond national jurisdiction pursuant to the BBNJ agreement. And these are some of the issues that I think Malawi will have to grapple with as being a party to this important agreement. And as a landlocked, developing African state, we do hope that through people like myself, we'll continue to motivate the relevant government structures that they prioritize to some extent, and they see the importance of ocean governance, especially as now has been instituted through the BBNJ agreement, through its specialized institutional mechanisms. I stop there for now because I'm sure I've run out of time. But I would have loved to be part and parcel of the discussions afterwards, questions and answers. But I should hope that you could email me some of the questions, some of the suggestions, some of the opportunities that Malawi may use to maximize this opportunity to be a party to the BBNJ agreement. Thank you.
I think Mr. Matonga cannot hear me now, but I really appreciated his video message because it touched on so many points that we wanted to discuss in this meeting. First and foremost, the urgency of implementing this agreement that we see every day. Furthermore, questions on the ratification process, ratification that can differ from country to country. For example, from the Austrian perspective, I think it would not go that smoothly or easily to ratify such an agreement as it went in the case of Malawi. But also the question of capacity to really participate in certain decision-making processes. So yeah, really appreciated the message of Mr. Matonga here. Now I will give the floor to Mr. Kesang Wangchuk from the Department of Multilateral Affairs within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and External Trade of the Royal Government of Bhutan. Looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Good afternoon to everyone. I thank the organizers for coordinating this session. As introduced, my name is Kesang Wangchuk. I'm working in the Department of Multilateral Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and External Trade in Bhutan. At the outset, I would like to start with not so good news. That Bhutan has not yet signed the BBNJ agreement, but this should not be interpreted as a decision not to join the agreement. We have been closely following the negotiations and discussions on the rules of procedure and the institutional arrangements surrounding the BBNJ agreement. And only 2-3 months ago, there was this national stakeholder workshop organized by the High Seas Alliance to familiarize our national and sectoral line agencies on the implications and the importance of the BBNJ agreement. As it is the case with all states, Bhutan adopts a cautious approach to all international agreements, treaties, and governance, and we believe that any decision to be part of an agreement should align with our national priorities, institutional capacities, and also long-term sustainability goals. Just to provide an overview of Bhutan's environmental ethos and treaty obligations, Bhutan is a landlocked country, but our deep-rooted environmental values and international obligations connect us to ocean governance. Today, Bhutan remains a party to a number of international environmental agreements, such as the CBD, the Nagoya Protocol, the Paris Agreement, and the UNFCCC. And our constitution mandates that a minimum of 60% of the land area should be under forest cover for all times to come. We are a carbon negative country, and at the minilateral front, Bhutan spearheaded the launch of the G0 forum at the COP29 to amplify the voices of the carbon neutral and carbon negative countries in global climate dialogue. Regarding the relevance of the ocean for landlocked countries, including Bhutan, it may seem as though the high seas are physically distant, but it's a fact that climate systems, biodiversity, and ecosystems are interconnected. For example, what happens in the ocean affects atmospheric cycles and precipitation patterns. And moreover, as a Buddhist country, we believe that our philosophical outlook emphasizes interdependence of all life forms. Sharing thoughts on equitable access and benefit sharing, which is a key component of the BBNJ agreement for landlocked countries, based on our experience from the Nagoya Protocol, fair benefit sharing should go beyond symbolic participation. Therefore, BBNJ mechanisms should establish a concrete platform for research partnerships, data access, partnerships and data access that enable meaningful engagement despite geographical limitations. On the matter of institutional participation and equity, we feel that there is a need for geographically balanced and inclusive representation in all subsidiary bodies and decision-making platforms as shared by most states during the PrepCom session. And we also feel that participation framework should be structured around the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, considering the varying circumstances of member states. And moreover, there should be special provisions for landlocked developing countries in the operational structure of the agreement's implementation mechanisms. I thank you for the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wangchuk, for sharing your country's perspective on this. I think I speak for most of us that we all hope that Bhutan will soon be in a position to sign the agreement. Next on my list is Mr. Franz Subieta Mariscal. He's Minister Counselor in the Permanent Mission of Bolivia to the United Nations. And it's my understanding that Bolivia, just like Austria, signed the BBNJ agreement on 20th September 23. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and first of all, thank to the organizers, the government of Nepal and Austria, for giving us this important opportunity to share our views on such important topic. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to join you today to discuss a critical question but often overlooked dimension of the BBNJ agreement. With a key question, how the BBNJ agreement could be implemented effectively for the benefit of landlocked states. But before I start, I would like to do two disclaimers. First, I will try to sketch some ideas to answer this ambitious question, but in my capacity of legal expert and not on behalf of the landlocked developing group, which my country is leading now. And two, I apologize in advance if I fail, because 6 minutes for such a pretentious question it's too little. Well, my presentation is divided in three parts. First, I will give you a big picture of the situation of the landlocked developing countries and highlight the relevance of the BBNJ agreement as a source of hope for the development of landlocked developing countries. Second, and based on the particular experience of Bolivia, I will try to identify some common challenges to all landlocked developing countries for the effective implementation on the rights and benefits of the BBNJ agreement. Finally, I would like to identify and propose a few lines of action that could help landlocked developing countries to overcome these challenges. First, it must be highlighted that landlocked states are not an heterogeneous group. There are 44 states in the world without access to the sea, of which 32 are landlocked developing countries, and among them, 16 are least developed countries. Therefore, the landlocked developing countries represent the 38% of the people living in the bottom billion societies, namely, the countries with the lowest average real gross domestic product per capita worldwide. Indeed, landlocked developing states are navigating, but unfortunately not at the sea, but in a unique hurdle of problems: geographical constraints, geopolitical tensions, lack of transport infrastructure, dependency on the mercy of coastal and transit states, and an ever-growing high international trade cost and restrictions. However, this first finding shows us the importance and challenge that we are facing trying to first ratify and then implement the BBNJ agreement. But beyond that, I believe that the BBNJ agreement has a special transformative potential for landlocked developing countries, permitting the access of all humankind, but especially of LLDCs, to the equitable sharing of benefits from marine genetic resources offering to the LLDCs a gateway to scientific innovation, capacity building, and technology transfer. On my second point, these findings also show us that the technical capabilities and political leverage of the landlocked developing countries are uneven and even asymmetrical to move forward the implementation of the agreement. For example, my country, Bolivia, was born as a coastal state, but due to a war of conquest in 1904, we became a landlocked state. Since then, we have tried to use all international treaties, mechanisms, and forums to secure our free and unconditional access to the sea, to participate in all its benefits. However, it's a complex task for many reasons that are also shared with the other landlocked developing countries. Let me mention them. First, geographic and structural disadvantages. Without direct coastal access, LLDCs often lack infrastructure, maritime institutions, maritime awareness, or political leverage in ocean-related negotiations. This limits our ability to negotiate and later engage in monitoring, enforcement, and benefit sharing of the BBNJ mechanism. 2, geopolitical marginalization. In the forums dominated by maritime powers, LLDCs risk being perceived as secondary actors, ensuring their priorities such as fair access to MGRs or inclusion in area-based management tools are reflected in implementing measures will require persistent advocacy. 3, balancing priorities. LLDC must reconcile the need to implement the BBNJ agreement with present domestic needs like poverty reduction and climate resilience. Overburdened governments may deprioritize marine issues, perceived as distant from daily realities. For instance, in the context of UNCLOS Convention, which is the bedrock of the BBNJ agreement, among LLDCs, only 28 have become parties of UNCLOS, including 20 LLDC, 9 of which are less developed countries, while another 7 have signed but not yet ratified. Therefore, national awareness and technical capacities are essential to move with the ratification and then with the implementation. To conclude, I would like to highlight 4 points for a blueprint to move and to improve the capabilities of landlocked developing countries to move forward with the implementation of the BBNJ agreement. First, advocate for an inclusive governance framework. LLDC should push for guaranteed representation in BBNJ bodies, subsidiary bodies, such as the Scientific and Technical Committee, regional alliance or world alliance like the group of landlocked developing countries can pool resources to negotiate stronger safeguards for equitable benefit sharing. 2, and maybe this is very complex, 2, build blue skills through education and partnership. Establishing regional training centers focused on marine policy, funded by the BBNJ capacity building mechanism. Partners with universities, NGO, coastal neighbors to create exchange programs and joint research ventures. 3, innovate financing mechanism. Develop blended finance models, combining BBNJ funds, private sector's partnership to support of LLDC projects. For example, a BBNJ Innovation Fund for landlocked states could prioritize technology transfer for MGR exploration. And 4, raise public awareness, launch campaigns to educate citizens and policymakers on why the oceans matters to LLDCs. To this end, the chair of the landlocked developing countries, soon will be submitting a General Assembly resolution on the International Day for the awareness of the rights and interests of landlocked developing countries under international law. To conclude, I would like to underline that LLDCs are not mere bystanders. We are mentioned 12 times at the BBNJ Agreement for essential reason. We are the custodians of interconnected ecosystems that burns at the mountains and reach the bottom of the sea. Thus, we are entitled in an equal footing with all states to participate in the benefits of the common heritage of humankind. By addressing their unique challenges and unlocking the potential of LLDCs, we can ensure that BBNJ becomes a new model of equitable and effective multilateralism. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mariscal. I really enjoyed your structure of the intervention, touching upon the common potentials, but also the common challenges that landlocked states face. And also, I mean, very strong statement at the end with concrete lines to take and how to move forward. Thank you so much. And I can assure you that Austria also firsthand feels the pain from losing access to the sea, like we did a few times back. Next, I would like to give the floor to my Austrian colleague, Mr. Gerald Gimper, Senior Advisor to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Climate and Environmental Protection. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you, colleagues, and good afternoon, everyone. It was already very, very interesting to listen to all the speakers here and listen to the insightful motivations why they engage as landlocked countries in the BBNJ, and also to Stefan Bretterhofer for his keynote speech, and which laid a foundation for understanding Austria's motivation as a landlocked country to actively engage in the BBNJ negotiations. And I would like to highlight a few points, what drives us to engage here. So I think for us, but also for everyone, it's a simple truth that being landlocked doesn't mean that we are disconnected from the ocean. And the health of the ocean affects us all, like through climate regulation, food security, global biodiversity. And what happens beyond national jurisdiction doesn't stay there. It shapes ecosystems, weather patterns, and resources worldwide. And from both the ecosystem and also the climate perspective as well, healthy oceans are essential for the entire planet, and Austria has long recognized this and has been a consistent and strong advocate for biodiversity protection at land and at sea. And Austria has a long tradition, actually, for environmental protection at sea. For example, we have been represented at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea for over 19 years, and as a vice president for over 3 years, and helped also to lay the legal foundation for what we are building on now. And more recently, we also supported the precautionary approach to deep-sea mining, calling for strong environmental safeguards. And our policy wants to put the ocean health first. So we're also part of the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and the 30 by 30 goal. And there are strong interlinkages with the BBNJ. And for our motivation to engage here is not only environmental policy driven. We have a strong environmental research community, like active universities that are key actors in marine science, especially in the microbial and genetic research. And some of this research explores the deep seas, which are quite unexplored. And these marine genetic resources there are like a treasure chest for biodiversity, for scientific innovation, and also for hand-on applications like in health or agriculture, nutritional cycles, environmental protection, and helps us in our all understanding of life on Earth. And we want to use this treasure chest, but not exploit it, of course. And we think BBNJ is an important agreement to achieve this. And For BBNJ, it is a vital role for research, also in landlocked countries, especially because it enables access to marine genetic resources. It ensures fair and equitable benefit sharing and provides a framework for capacity building and technology transfer, which is also very important for us, because we want BBNJ to ensure that science remains open and accessible, especially for public and academic research. And Austria fully supports fair and equitable benefit sharing. And we believe that scientific knowledge works at best when it's done globally, when researchers all over the world, including from LLDCs, LDCs, and SIDS, have access to knowledge, resources, infrastructure, and therefore we must design a system that creates opportunities and not barriers. At the same time, we want to build bridges between regions that benefits of marine knowledge and share equitable knowledge. However, we think that these systems should be designed efficiently, and there are already many obligations for researchers, like different triggers, procedures, and databases, often across parallel legal frameworks. And for science, especially with limited funding, navigating through this complexity can be a real burden. And of course, science must contribute to access and benefit sharing, but also we should be aware that researchers are here to study ocean life and not drown in paperwork. And therefore, we have a strong interest also in shaping this agreement in a way that it doesn't create avoidable burdens, and learn from the conventions and systems that have comparable goals, and shape a system that creates synergies between them. So therefore, we think as a landlocked country, it is our goal to shape a system that is transparent, as it's practical, and avoids duplications, and that the focus is there where it belongs, on advancing knowledge and protecting the oceans. And BBNJ for us is truly a universal agreement, and it is implemented. Implementation must reflect that. And landlocked countries have the role to play because they are as dependent from the oceans as other countries are. And we see our role shaping a practical global governance that accelerates biodiversity conservation in promoting open scientific collaboration and not hinder it. And we are very confident that this can be achieved with this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald, for explaining the Austrian position here, also touching upon our position regarding cautionary approach and our priority on research and science when it comes to the implementation of the BBNJ agreement. Last but certainly not least, I'm happy to give the floor to another co-organizer of this event. Ms. Fabienne McLellan is Managing Director of Ocean Care. Ocean Care is a marine conservation organization based in Switzerland and has been working to protect marine life since 1989. We're looking forward to hearing your view.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this event today, and I would also like to briefly thank the co-organizers, especially Austria and Nepal, for having organized this timely and important event, and I deeply value the insights from previous speakers. Ocean Care is an international marine conservation organization based in Switzerland, as you mentioned, and we are also a member of the High Seas Alliance, which is a group of roughly 50 organizations that work together to strengthen high seas governance. And I would like to thank the High Seas Alliance for facilitating the organization of this event. Ocean Care started its involvement in the BBNJ process at the very beginning of the effort back in 2004. We are very pleased to be here at PrepCom and will continue to engage in this critically important process to set up the foundations that will help leverage the ambition of the agreement to change the situation for the ocean. When it comes to the relevance of this side event to Ocean Care, let me just add that our primary objective remains that of raising awareness about the BBNJ agreement and the different tools it provides to address the threats facing areas beyond national jurisdiction, especially transboundary pollutants such as marine plastic and underwater noise. We have consistently advocated that this agreement will be able to fill a critical governance gap by addressing the mitigation of these transboundary threats in ABNJ. How does it do this? Well, put simply, it provides, among others, for the application of much-needed tools such as robust, transparent, and stringent EIAs and ABMTs, including marine protected areas. Let me now switch gear to the topic of this side event. While landlocked countries have played a key role in the shaping of the law of the sea, as previous speakers have emphasized, the BBNJ agreement is often perceived and viewed as primarily the business of coastal states, especially by the general public. This is, of course, a fallacy. All humans in all countries on our blue planet directly and indirectly benefit from the ocean. The ocean regulates climate, generates a significant amount of oxygen we breathe, and is critical to secure food security for present and future generations. There is no such thing as a separate climate between landlocked countries and coastal states. The triple planetary crisis we live in concerns all nations, and it starts with the ocean. Oceanic processes influence atmospheric conditions, shaping weather patterns that impact agriculture, freshwater availability, and climate stability in inland areas. Landlocked countries also depend and have an impact on marine ecosystems through riverine systems, with several major rivers having their source in landlocked countries. What humans do in ABNJ directly impacts the ocean and consequently our glaciers, our agriculture, our economy, and our future. The ocean and biodiversity contains no natural boundaries, including geographical boundaries set by humans between coastals and landlocked countries, and it needs the efforts of all to protect BBNJ. What I encourage you to understand and take back to your constituents is that the BBNJ agreement completely revolutionizes the governance of ABNJ, which over decades has proven to be outdated and inadequate to ensure the protection of BBNJ. Building on and reaffirming the rights of landlocked states in UNCLOS, the BBNJ agreement gives new tools and opportunities to participate in ocean-related activities to landlocked countries, further leveling the playing field in ocean governance and putting all countries on par with each other. In simpler terms, the treaty matters to all countries, including landlocked countries. All states are equal in the governance framework that the BBNJ agreement has introduced. This framework is made of rights and responsibilities, and only a meaningful participation by all countries in the BBNJ agreement will underpin the governance framework it introduces. Landlocked countries share the same burden of coastal states and will be in a position to reap their same benefits if committed to properly implementing the BBNJ agreement. The first step towards this is by signing and then ratifying the BBNJ agreement and becoming parties, of course. Switzerland, looking at one specific example I'm naturally quite familiar with, is deeply connected with the ocean and the BBNJ agreement once it enters into force and it is implemented. Switzerland signed the BBNJ agreement earlier this year. And although geographically nestled within the remit of the Alps, Switzerland is home to around 60 shipping companies operating a fleet of 900 vessels. And it is a global hub of scientific research related to the ocean, as well as leading pharmaceutical companies. So the BBNJ agreement has implications for Switzerland and vice versa. Ocean Care believes that the BBNJ agreement will give all landlocked countries the tools to be in the driving seat when it comes to the protection of BBNJ, instead of remaining a bystander in such protection as it has happened under the governance framework prior to the adoption of the BBNJ agreement. Indeed, it's not by happenstance that the BBNJ agreement recognizes the unique circumstances of landlocked countries, including developing landlocked countries. Well, how does it do so? It establishes obligations for states to share monetary and non-monetary benefits from activities regard to marine genetic resources from ABNJ, including sharing possibilities for research from developing states to join research cruises where samples and digital sequence information are accessible after a research cruise. These provisions will facilitate scientists, regardless of their location, to contribute to the advancement of marine scientific research. It offers tools and opportunities in relation to capacity building and the transfer of marine technology, including through a dedicated annex that provides an exhaustive list of the kinds and types of such CBTMT. It ensures a seat at the table of the Conference of the Parties, where decisions on the implementation of the treaty will be taken, including the designation of ABMTs, including MPAs. It gives them a voice in the context of the EIA processes so that the environmental harm that could impact the ecosystem services of the ocean, services that all states benefit from, can be prevented. It allows them to tap into the funds that will be established under Article 52, including monetary benefit sharing from activities with regard to MGRs and the CHEF fund. So in conclusion, this side event, despite being brief, clearly shows that the BBNJ agreement strengthens ocean governance as a result of its focus on putting all countries on par with each other and ensuring that they take responsibility and can directly benefit from its framework. One that supports more fairness and equity when it comes to the ocean, which must be regarded as the common heritage of all humankind, now more than ever. Participating now in this preparatory phase is a unique chance for all countries to help shape this agreement, will be implemented, including how its institutions and processes will operate. This call is therefore about showing that we care about the conservation of our ocean. It is also about strengthening multilateralism, protecting shared global commons, restoring ocean health and resilience, and ensuring a sustainable future for all generations, whether they will live in a coastal state or a landlocked country. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Danielle, especially for really very concretely outlining the benefits of BBNJ for landlocked countries, and also highlighting the special case of Switzerland, which is, of course, very unique, I would say, in that way. We have a few minutes left before we have to wrap up. I would now like to open the floor for any comments or interventions that you may have. And if you do so, please state your name and affiliation when taking the floor. Is there anyone who would like to intervene? Yes, I see a colleague from the EU, I think.
Thank you very much. I'm Marc Rachet from the European Union. Actually, I do have any question for the panelists, but I wanted to thank you for having organized this side event, and I wanted to thank the panelists for their eloquent and interesting presentation. Actually, you have contributed to connect the dots and to show how much the ocean is important, not only for coastal states, not only for island states, but also for states that are not directly connected to the ocean. Actually, by saying this, I already commit a big mistake, because you have spent the last hours to tell us how much you are connected with the ocean through the economy, through scientific research, through the link between terrestrial and marine ecosystem, also through navigation, through your various activities, knowledge and science and others. So all this is extremely important. I wanted also to say to Austria, which says actually they have this luck to be part of the EU and a market system that actually facilitate maybe their connection to the coastal areas. That the EU is also lucky to have this diversity in its membership, to have both coastal states and landlocked countries like Austria and like others. It's certainly important. And maybe I should not say this, but to the other landlocked countries in the room, I would say that if one day the EU tended to forget its responsibility towards landlocked countries, they can count on you and others to remind us those responsibilities. I think this is important. More concretely, we continue to negotiate now the preparation of the first COP. This is important. We still have in mind, indeed, those responsibilities toward landlocked countries. I thank Bolivia for having given us very concrete ways of giving a concrete expression to the elements that could be set in terms of governance of the agreement, participation in the subcommittees in particular, but also benefit sharing, capacity building and technology transfer. So I wanted to tell you we have all this in mind. Of course, we need also to be pragmatic and realistic in the approach, but we are committed at least to do our best. Thank you very much in any case for this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the intervention. I see a colleague in the back there.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm from Switzerland, Norbert. We heard a little bit of Switzerland, but we are in a different situation from Austria or from Bolivia. We have never had access to the sea, so we have not been cut off. And we are also not a member of the European Union, so we cannot rely on the European Union, but we have to build up the capacity ourselves. So this is a challenge, because my environment ministry, where I work for, we just don't have the knowledge and the experience of marine issues. And when I will have to go in the parliament and explain the ratification of this treaty, they will ask me, but how will you do an impact assessment? You don't have the knowledge to do it. And I always wondered, I approached some of my colleagues if we could work together, because it, in our view, makes sense that for once we are in need to capacity building from other countries. So my question to the panel members that are from landlocked country: how do you build up in your ministries this capacity? Maybe you already had it. How will you deal with impact assessments in your ministry with this responsibility to implement the agreement? Thank you.
Thank you so much. From our point of view, to be frank, it looks like Switzerland is doing quite well, even though without being an EU member or without access to the ocean. But is there any member of the or panelists who would like to answer to that question?
I'm forced to speak.
Yes.
Well, it's a process. It's a building process. I mentioned in my intervention, that we are still trying to create this marine awareness inside our countries. Because when we take this agreement to our countries and ask to the legislators to ratify it, they say, what is this? And this is a long process, a challenge. And of course, it's curious. Even if we don't have access to the sea, Bolivia has a navy. And we have training people as a people of the sea, and we are trying to don't disconnect from our maritime conscience. So we are doing that, but the resources are scarce, as I mentioned too. When you need to decide on your national priorities, fighting against the reduction of poverty, climate, resilience, on your list, normally you put these important technical issues at the end. And this is the problem, the prioritization. So I think that, of course, we have it's a complex interrelation of institutions, academic, the public institutions too, related to the marine affairs, but at this point is still a mysterious answer. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other panelists who would like to? Oh, yeah, please go on.
Thank you very much for this question. Although Austria had access to the sea, I doubt that it had capacity about environmental impact assessments by then. So there is not a big capacity about it, but still there are a lot of implications from the BBNJ that it's relevant for Austria, of course. And we try to focus on this part and try to advocate biodiversity conservation, because it's, as already said by many speakers, important for the whole world, even if a country is not directly has a shoreline or access to the sea. So we try to more focus on this part that has direct implications. And maybe this could be a starting point to engage between landlocked countries if there is a common interest to build up capacity in impact assessments, for example.
Thank you. Just I would like to add one or two things. That awareness is required to all of us. But there is something going on in our country about the climate justice also is huge, because of the variable of the climate from Tarai to Himalayan. Right now it is just today I read the news that 2 degrees Celsius is higher than the last year right now in the Tarai region. So we can connect with that environmental issues and all the things, because like Bhutan, we also have the policy about 40% of the forest should be in the land. So that will be, we may connect with that situation with the other country, that we can discuss and we can go forward in that matter.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to make an intervention? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Is that working? Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy again with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, but coming also as a citizen of Seychelles, an African small island developing state. So great to learn more from the panelists today. I think my question just relies on a view of how do we ensure greater maybe collaboration between small island developing states and landlocked developing countries. And I think there were several points around capacity that's brought up, but it also sparked my interest in terms of the climate and how much of, least contributors, but also quite vulnerable, whether it's glaciers, sea level rise, these are quite connected. And maybe to also think about this vis-a-vis subsidiary bodies or other ways that we're going to operationalize things. So just wondering how that can be further strengthened in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting question on how small island developing states and landlocked states could collaborate more, and also including in BBNJ. I don't know if there's any panelist who has an opinion on that already. I mean, I think it's definitely something that should be taken in mind and borne in mind for the further discussions we are having. And I think today's event also showed that, that's one of the points that should be borne in mind. I don't know if anyone wants to add something to that. Okay.
I think it's required a next round of discussion about the relation between the small island and the landlocked country, because we are not looking in that part, so we have to coordinate it with all the stakeholders. Then we can say on that matter.
Yeah, if I may, we have common platforms. For example, the Office of the United Nations of the High Representative for, this is a long name that I don't remember, but we are included in that office that are trying to coordinate efforts. The main thing I believe that is to keep in mind that we are not disconnected. We are interlinked in all the challenges. And of course, we want to move from landlocked states to land-linked states. And part of this idea is also try to connect the dots with all the other challenges that especially your countries are suffering. And of course, it's a complex task, but we are trying to also use these special groups to have dialogues between our groups of seeds, landlocked developing countries, and work together, because sometimes when we fragment our positions, when we are seeing just ourselves, we lose the opportunity to work together. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much. With having in mind that we're already a bit over time, I would now invite Mr. Daniel Kachelries from the International Union for Conservation of Nature to give some concluding remarks. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Max. It's my honor to deliver closing remarks on this extremely interesting and rich side event on behalf of IUCN. And thank you to the co-organizers, the Mission of Austria, the Mission of Nepal, High Seas Alliance, and Ocean Care. I will try to attempt to summarize a few of the pertinent issues that I've heard, with no aspiration for completeness, given the richness of the discussion. I think in terms of opportunities, I heard a lot of speakers refer to elements about the oceans being for the benefit of all of humankind, many benefits being shared generally, an interest in preserving ocean health, preserving ocean biodiversity, and the interlinkages of those with so many things that connect to the realities of all humans on this planet, including the climate, the generation of oxygen, and also that many of the benefits generated by the oceans, but also risks generated by the oceans, like extreme weather events, do not know boundaries. In terms of specific opportunities of the BBNJ agreement, I heard that many speakers felt that BBNJ effectively builds on UNCLOS that has already established the rights of landlocked countries with regard to maritime affairs, and effectively expands the toolbox for landlocked countries in engaging, and further levels the playing field. For example, in terms of decision-making with regard to area-based management tools and transparency about environmental impact assessments for activities that affect these common goods, these common benefits that the ocean provides for all, but also a very strong focus on being able to be connected and benefit from marine scientific research. And many speakers have emphasized that research and science works best if it is shared broadly, again, globally, across boundaries, and a strong wish to design or to further operationalize the benefit sharing provisions, both monetary and non-monetary benefit sharing provisions of the BBNJ agreement, in a way that it helps landlocked countries be part of that marine scientific research ecosystem. I think we've heard one very practical suggestion of using some of the funds that the BBNJ agreement allocates to capacity building and transformative technology to build blue skills in landlocked countries in order to make that gap smaller. In terms of challenges, I think we've heard landlocked countries are not a homogeneous group, very heterogeneous, but there are maybe some structural challenges shared. And one of them that was raised by, I think, all speakers from landlocked states is about how to get ocean issues, and this BBNJ agreement in particular, on the national agenda. How to, both in the public but also in domestic decision-making, how to raise the importance and in a way duplicate what this side event has been doing, making the case for why the ocean and why BBNJ matters to citizens in landlocked developing countries, to decision-makers in landlocked countries as a whole. And that also has resource implications, both in terms of staffing and in terms of resources to be able to attend the meeting. And I'm very aware that Joel Little Matonga, for example, was not able to be here in person, but it was great that he could deliver remarks on a video. And how to communicate against competing priorities that landlocked countries have on their domestic agendas. And then in terms of moving forward, I think one message that was received loud and clear was how important it is to maintain that seat at the table, to make sure landlocked countries are not seen as secondary actors in ocean-related discussions. And one of the ways to do that is to prioritize and advance inclusive governance frameworks in this PrepCom, in setting up the institutions for the BBNJ agreement, and that there may be some issues that landlocked countries could converge around, and some of the ones that were mentioned was accelerating the conservation and sustainable use of BBNJ as a common resource of mankind, and to build on and foster and improve marine scientific research and the ability of landlocked countries to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for the very comprehensive summary of our discussion. With this, I would like to once again thank our panelists for their thoughtful interventions and contributions. I think this whole notion, like moving landlocked states from being landlocked to land-linked and interconnected with not only coastal states, but like with the ecosystem as a whole, I think it's a nice notion that we can conclude on that. And thank you also for your participation, for your active participation, and for your interventions from the floor. Let's keep on working together for a prompt entry into force of the BBNJ agreement, and please enjoy the rest of the PrepCom session.